Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, total victory of Hare Krishna. Welcome back to another Bhagavad-gita class with your host, me, Prahlad. Today we're doing Bhagavad-gita 6.4. Getting into it. Yadā hi nendriyārtheṣu, yadā hi nendriyārtheṣu, na karmasv, anuṣajjate, sarva-saṅkalpa-sannyāsī, yogā-ārūḍhaḥ tadocyate, yadā when, high certainly, na not, indriya-artheṣu, in sense gratification, na never, karmasu in fruitive activities, anuṣajjate does necessarily engage, sarva-saṅkalpa, all material desires, sannyāsī, renouncer, yogā-ārūḍhaḥ, elevated in yoga, tadā, at that time, ucyate, is said to be. Translation: A person is said to have attained to yoga, having renounced all material activities, desire, all material Let me restart. A person is said to have attained to yoga when having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. A comment? Jai Prahlad. Thank you. Yeah, I find it the translation a bit doesn't make perfect sense in English. A person is said to have attained to yoga. Yeah. The person is attained to yoga. Anyway, Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. When a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification, since one cannot live without engagement. Without Kṛṣṇa consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered. Without Kṛṣṇa consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Kṛṣṇa conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa, and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape the material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. Interesting. Changes. There are not many. In the original edition, a person is said to have attained to yoga when a person is said to be elevated in yoga. That's the part I was talking about. It's written a bit confusing. Need to find the correct part. There's 3, or 4. And there was no mention of that change. Classic. What does it say here? A person. This is different. This is the manuscript. A person is said to be elevated to the top of the ladder of yoga when he does not do anything for sense gratification, nor engages in fruitive activities through renunciation of all material desires. That sounds pretty good, and makes more sense. Then a person is said to have attained to yoga. elevated in yoga. So, elevated to the top of the ladder of yoga. Putting in my own subjective opinion, I think it is going closer to the manuscript. Let's talk about elevated to the top of the ladder of yoga and be elevated in yoga. I mean, the original translation in the Macmillan edition is, I would say, pretty far flung from the translation here. It's elevated to the top of the ladder of yoga when he does not do anything for sense gratification, having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Yeah, so it's sort of like a Cliff Notes version. It's been edited quite heavily, but yeah, I'm a fan of the revised and enlarged edition for the change, even though it doesn't show up here, which means that it's been changed sometime after this change list was created. Anyway, talking. Oh, I wonder if the purport's different. That's purports is engaged in I don't know what happened there. Let me do a tiny bit of troubleshooting because my computer is not liking, or the network is not liking staying connected. Give me a moment. I'm not sure. Sorry about this. I have to turn off my webcam. Make it a bit better. This is very strange. My internet suddenly decided to not be good. Anyway, hopefully you guys can see this. It's going through perfectly. So, reading Prabhupada's writing in its raw form. When a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he no longer has any scope of being engaged in sense gratification or fruitive activities. Those who are not so engaged must be engaged in sense gratificatory business, because one cannot be without any engagement. Without Kṛṣṇa consciousness, one must always be seeking for self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Kṛṣṇa conscious person can do anything and everything for the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa, and thus he can be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization of Kṛṣṇa consciousness has to try mechanically to be freed from material desire, and then he can be elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. Yeah, so it is a bit different from what's in either of these two editions, but still got the same sort of message going through. The wording's a bit different. Yeah, talking about the actual purport, reading it like two times already. Yeah, I'm liking it more and more. It has a clear message. Once you have the Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Okay. Apparently, there is no original manuscript for this chapter. That one is a composite of 3 edited manuscripts. See my class on 6.1, read the beginning of the Jazz edits. Okay. Getting the information. Read the beginning of the Jazz edits. Notes for chapter 6, manuscript. For this chapter, the Bhaktivedanta archives hold 3 manuscripts, designated BG06. Okay. Judging from my scanned copy, this manuscript seems to be a carbon copy of the top copy, now lost. At the start of the first page, my note in my handwriting reads, typed by chapter. Do not composite for checking out. Does that mean that this is a composite? Huh. Sorry, I'm just reading this. It's quite a bit. But okay. Apparently there's no original manuscript. It's a mix of 3. Well, anyway, this is something that Prabhupada wrote. So reading it is still reading his writing. Anyway, talking about the actual purport, we'll talk about the original Macmillan edition. Even though all of these editions, now it's getting real complicated. No original edition, it's a combination of 3 editions. It's like, okay, very cool. To someone who's not invested in the book changes and that sort of stuff, it would be a bit confusing. And it's like, oh man, I can't be bothered. I'll just read whatever's there. But looking through is sort of eye-opening, I guess you could say. It's important. But yeah, basically, what I'm getting from this purport is that, when you are in the service of Kṛṣṇa, when you have that Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you're detached from sense gratification. And this is said multiple times. Before, I think I've said it a few times before in different verses. When you're in that Kṛṣṇa consciousness, there's no sense gratification needed. But you know what's new in this part, which I've never really said, but when you're without the Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you must be seeking, you must be seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. It says it there. When you're not in that Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you have that sense gratification. I never really thought about it. There can't be no gratification. It's either you have the gratification for Kṛṣṇa, or you have the gratification for yourself. There's no in between. Not being in Kṛṣṇa consciousness automatically makes you seek sense gratification. And it says down the bottom here, one who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape the material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. That I think it's possible to escape the it's possible to escape the sense gratification, or the seeking of sense gratification through non-Kṛṣṇa conscious means, but it's just a whole lot harder. It requires a lot of effort. You might be doing meditation, renunciation, all that sort of stuff, trying not to be in that world of sense gratification, but it's hard. Well, I think it would be hard, not having the knowledge of Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa consciousness, not having that knowledge that everything you do is for the sense gratification of Kṛṣṇa. And so it also says, but a Kṛṣṇa conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa, and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. So a person might be mechanically trying to escape the material desires, doing all this sort of stuff, sort of putting in a lot of effort and struggling. Whereas a Kṛṣṇa conscious person can just do whatever. They can do the same thing they would be doing if they didn't have the understanding, or they didn't have knowledge, and they weren't in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. They could be doing the same thing, but just doing it for, Kṛṣṇa. And they would be the sense gratification, the whole world of that wouldn't be there for them. They would be detached, as it says, from sense gratification. And so I think that's a important distinction to have, that while in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you don't have that sense gratification. Okay, I've heard that 1,000 times. Then, knowing that when you're not in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, the sense gratification is there. Well, it has to be there. I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone else, but in my sort of thinking, when you're outside of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, there's not necessarily the world of sense gratification, but for like almost everyone there would be. But that's the sort of thing that it says for down the bottom. One who has no self-realization must mechanically try to escape the material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. So basically, it's proving, Prabhupada is saying that it is possible to not have the sense gratification outside Kṛṣṇa consciousness, but it is difficult. And that's before you are elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. And the yoga ladder isn't the goal. The goal is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So even then, if you're climbing the yoga ladder, you're you're going to reach the goal eventually. but the goal is like right next to the ladder. All you have to do is just walk through, getting the knowledge of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Being in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. It's a lot easier. Yeah. Yeah, I never. Yeah, this line here. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification. After it says, when a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased upon himself, and thus no longer engaged in sense gratification. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification. Yeah, I didn't think of one must be engaged in sense gratification. It was sort of maybe. It's a bit more difficult when you're outside of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, but yeah, it's an insight for me. Thinking about a contemporary application. Hey, well, talking about sense gratification, it's pretty easy. But thinking, about all the people who are out there, searching for sort of a bit of, sense gratification, a bit of happiness, go out to clubs, partying, doing all these sort of activities, drugs, alcohol, that sort of stuff. Always trying to achieve sense gratification from something that's outside themselves, that's not themselves. So, with Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you being the individual soul and having the super soul with you, basically, being in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, you're gratifying yourself, because you're gratifying the Lord, which you are part of it. So it's easy. So you're not seeking external gratification through some sort of means outside yourself. Holidays, expensive things, whatever it is. It's not coming from within yourself. And so if it's not coming from within yourself, how can you be pleased with yourself? If it's coming from outside, you're basically happy with other things. You're happy for other things, but not for yourself. Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of the contemporary application. And the people within Kṛṣṇa consciousness are happy with basically doing whatever for Kṛṣṇa. And it's even like something as basic as just sitting on the ground. People are usually happy just sitting on the ground. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll sit on the ground. Whereas people outside of Kṛṣṇa consciousness are like, maybe it's just culture or training, but yeah, some people are like, oh, I don't want to sit on the ground, it's uncomfortable, or it's dirty, I'd rather sit in a chair, something like that. But it's yeah, something as simple as sitting on the ground is people in Kṛṣṇa consciousness are happy with. I know that's sort of a bad example, but it's anything, big or small, person in Kṛṣṇa consciousness is happy. There we go. So to finish us off, get back to the purport itself. Yadā hi nendriyā-artheṣu karmasv anuṣajjate sarva-saṅkalpa-sannyāsī yogā-ārūḍhaḥ tadocyate. A person is said to have attained the yoga. This person is said to have attained to yoga when having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. There we go. Yeah, I can show share my face. Anyway, there we go. Saying the internet is doing okay. Well, thank you guys for watching live. I see a few people are watching live. Thank you for the comments, the insights. Yeah. Oh, and thank you for the people watching afterwards. Always. If you enjoy any of the content that we do here, give it a like, give it a share, tag your friends. I'll be back later this week to do some more Bhagavad-gita verses. Moving on to chapter 6. From last time I did, it was the sort of ending of chapter 5. What was chapter 6 called? Something yoga. Oh man. It's not what I remember it as. Sankhya Yoga. And then Sankhya Yoga, so I'll share my screen real quick. It's good enough. So here, looking at the different chapters, it says Sankhya Yoga, chapter 6, Prabhupada. So that's the original editions. And then here, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, which is different. The names of the chapter are different. I think here, it's been changed. None of our manuscripts give the chapter title here. They only give the chapter number. For a discussion of the revision season, I was reading about the Sankhya Yoga. The change in title for the second edition is something I agreed to with reluctance. After Srila Prabhupada had seen the published title and never objected. Interesting. So so Prabhupada saw the title, said, "Oh yeah, it's good." Didn't say no. I want it changed, and probably after his disappearance, which is coming up soon, later this week. Probably after his disappearance, at the urging of our Sanskrit editors, I agreed to the change. Anyway, it's a long-winded explanation on why, but Prabhupada didn't want it changed. Well, not that he didn't want it changed, but he never said it should be changed. Anyway, Sankhya Yoga, because I remember it as Sankhya Yoga. Not what's the other one? Dhyana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I already said that. Good morning, good evening, or good night. It is a good night for me. Param Vijayate Shri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam to the world victory of Hare Kṛṣṇa. Farewell.